Sunrise poured over the Iowa farmhouse. Margaret Holloway's datapad hummed on the kitchen table, the screen lit with an official communiqué. Krellin Agricultural Cartel, 600% protein levy, Earth-designated test market.
600%. That wasn't a hike. That was a declaration.
She set her mug down with deliberate care, then turned the datapad face down. Under storm clouds, the cartel's black spire hummed with activity. Earth had been notified. In the boardroom, a holographic chart displayed the price hike, a jagged red line climbing skyward.
The human market will buckle. They always do. Squeeze the protein, and their civilization starves within a cycle. By the time their leaders plead for negotiation, we'll own every gram of protein from here to the rim.
On Earth, markets convulsed. Screens flashed the news. Crowds stared at empty shelves that hadn't yet arrived. Margaret Holloway poured a second cup of coffee and sat in silence. No calls, no statements. Margaret Holloway pushed open the door to her office. The same window looked out over the same wheat, but the world had shifted.
Find the small protein operations, the ones the cartel already bled dry. Offer them a fair exit. No press, no fanfare.
Over the following weeks, cooperative field agents knocked on doors from the Hydra planes to the orbital stations. Deals were struck in dusty barns and hydroponic domes. Fair market value, ownership transferred without threats. On the galactic feeds, the Krellin cartel continued to present the hike as an economic inevitability. Earth was a test market, nothing more. Back in her office, Margaret unfolded an old-fashioned star chart and pressed a red pin into a system near the Veil Nebula.
One foothold, then another. The cartel won't feel it until it's too late.
The cooperative's acquisitions team filed reports without electronic fanfare. Every contract bore the sheaf of wheat seal. The cartel's quarterly earnings still looked robust. Their analysts noticed nothing unusual. Margaret closed the map and poured herself another coffee. The silence was the only reply Earth needed. The Iowa wheat turned gold, then white under snow, then gold again. The cooperative's work never stopped.
15% now. The roots are spreading.
In the cartel's logistics hub, a junior analyst noticed a 2.3% protein shortfall from the border colonies. His supervisor glanced at the numbers and dismissed them as seasonal variation. The report was never escalated.
A 2% dip. The Earth farmers are too busy clutching their hoes. They couldn't strategize their way out of a barn.
Meanwhile, cooperative agents sealed a deal for a hydroponic array above Vendra Ivory, the cartel's former provider.
The cartel sees nothing because they expect nothing. That's still our greatest asset.
The cartel's quarterly earnings report noted a 2% dip in protein throughput. A footnote, nothing more. Margaret added another pin to the map. The cluster now formed a quiet constellation of cooperative control. 6 months on, the Terran Farm Cooperative held 15% of the protein supply chain, and no one had noticed. 1 year after the notice, Margaret's star chart held a constellation of red pins. 30% of the protein supply chain had moved quietly into cooperative hands. The freighter, Dorothy G., launched from Earth orbit, its pale green hull bright under the midday sun. Its rear cargo bay glowed warm orange as twin cyan beams laced the first load of protein canisters aboard. A week later, Margaret walked the gantry of the Vandor Prime hydroponic ring. The air smelled of cool water and new growth.
You'll be paid fairly. Every cycle. That's the only deal we offer.
The cartel's quarterly report landed in Rel Cora's inbox. A 5% revenue dip stared back at him.
Market correction. The outer colonies always fluctuate. Nothing to concern the board.
5% feels like nothing to them now. By the time it feels like something, it will be too late.
On a border world, a weathered alien farmer watched the cooperative logo replace the cartel's on his silo. He smiled for the first time in a decade. The Terran Farm Cooperative held a silent 30% of the protein supply chain, and the cartel's board had yet to ask a single question. 18 months after the cartel's announcement, the cooperative's grip on the protein trade had become a quiet vice.
51%. From here, the cartel's own logistics would begin to fail them.
In the freight lanes, the Dorothy G and its sister ships quietly rerouted cargo. The cartel's deliveries started missing windows. A logistics memo surfaced in the cartel's lower tiers. Protein shipments from Ketha Reach delayed by 12 cycles. Cause unknown. In Des Moines, Margaret gathered her core team around the old map. The pins now covered the inner systems.
We're past the point of no return. Keep it fair. No one gets squeezed the way the cartel squeezed them.
Across the border colonies, more farmers signed with the cooperative. The deals were simple. Fair pay, no quotas, a future. The cartel's logistics managers began filing reports about delivery gaps. Each one was marked for escalation and then buried.
Rel Cora skimmed a report. Supply chain irregularities across 5 systems. He set it aside. Not now. I have a board meeting.
The cooperative held silent majority control. The cartel's board still hadn't been told, but the cracks were becoming too wide to ignore. Inside the cartel's central logistics hub, a single auditor ran a full trace. The result stopped him cold. 60% of the protein flowing across the sector was moving through channels that did not belong to the cartel. He traced the outflow to a single registration node, the Terran Farm Cooperative. He flagged the report for immediate board review. His supervisor deleted it before the cycle ended. A second copy was filed under a different header. It vanished from the system logs within hours. In the empty data hall, the auditor muttered that every gram was going to the same address, that no one seemed to care. The filtered weekly summary reached Rel Cora minutes later. The audit's findings had been replaced with a paragraph on minor scheduling adjustments.
Minor. As expected. Earth's farmers couldn't organize a shipment across a single system, let alone the galaxy.
The auditor stared at the empty logs. The evidence had been purged. Only a single offline copy remained. He locked the drive in his desk. If the board wouldn't listen, someone else might. On 3 famine-stricken worlds, cooperative freighters arrived with emergency rations. No cameras, no press release, just food. Images of alien children clutching bright yellow TFC ration packs spread across the star networks anyway. The Krellin cartel responded with a public statement. Sentimental dirt worshippers who undermine galactic trade. When asked for comment, Margaret Holloway glanced at her own fields and shrugged.
The dirt is where food comes from. We'll keep planting.
The colossal freighter Dorothy G became the accidental symbol of the humanitarian effort, its image shared by millions. The cartel's stock fell another 8%. Rel Cora addressed investors shortly after.
Temporary turbulence. The protein market corrects itself. Earth's little cooperative is a sentimental footnote.
They're still explaining. We're already feeding.
On 12 worlds, the cooperative logo meant survival. The cartels meant a bitter memory. And still, the board hadn't seen the full picture. In a closed board session, a senior delegate's datapad chimed. An anonymous packet. The subject, audit, board review. The main hologram flooded with a flowchart. 65% of the cartel's protein shipments now traced to a single entity.
This is impossible. A collective of farmers can't outmaneuver a galactic institution.
The board erupted into chaos. Some demanded immediate legal action. Others whispered of negotiation. One board member's voice cut through the din. Margaret Holloway. The room fell silent. The leaked document zoomed to its footer. Source: Terran Farm Cooperative, Single Office, Des Moines, Earth.
He had called them sentimental dirt worshippers. Now they held more of his supply chain than he did.
The board demanded answers. For the first time in his career, Rel Cora had none. His authority evaporated in the cold light. An emergency briefing was ordered. But the data was undeniable. The cartel had been dismantled, without a single weapon. The name Margaret Holloway lingered in the air like smoke. The board had seen the truth. Now they had to face it. Rel Cora ordered a full forensic audit of every cartel holding. No more filtered summaries. 3 weeks later, the final report filled the boardroom hologram. A single green slice dominated the pie chart. 71%.
71%. Who is this farmer? What does she want with us?
The board authorized an emergency legal challenge. The trade court rejected it within hours. Stock tickers across a dozen systems turned crimson. The cartel bled 40% of its value in a single hour. In the boardroom, exhausted executives stared at the numbers. There were no more moves. Then a quiet chime. A message from the cooperative. We're ready to discuss terms.
They're offering us terms. We're already theirs.
Rel Cora straightened his collar and prepared to make the most humiliating call of his career. The Terran Farm Cooperative was waiting, and Margaret Holloway answered on the first ring.
Mr. Cora, I've been expecting your call. You must be calling about the 71%.
Yes. We wish to discuss a resolution. Your cooperative has been aggressive.
Aggressive. We paid fair market value. No threats, no leverage, just farming.
Rel Cora's tendrils drooped. He had expected surrender, only to find a mirror held up to his own methods.
I'll send you an offer. It's simple. 1 page, no fine print. You'll know what's fair when you read it.
The call ended with a soft click. Margaret pushed back from her desk and poured a fresh cup of coffee. In his dark office, Rel Cora stared at the silent communicator. The weight of 71% pressed down. 20 minutes later, his datapad chimed. A single page, no preamble. The farm cooperative seal glowed at the bottom.
She called it simple. It was a guillotine dressed as an invitation.
He opened the document. The words were few, but they redefined the galaxy. The offer was delivered. The waiting was over. A courier drone dropped a single sheet of paper onto the boardroom table. The cartel's fate had been reduced to a page. The text was stark. Sell now at market. Or sell later at salvage. Monsieur Holloway.
Sell now at market, or sell later at salvage.
An older board member, tendrils wilted, whispered. She set this all up. Every acquisition. Every contract. The board erupted. One faction screamed about surrender. Another, quieter, stared at the numbers and saw no alternative. In Des Moines, Margaret Holloway picked up her coffee cup. The same words lay on her desk, but she didn't need to read them again. She waited, a faint smile on her tired face. The hardest part was already done. Rel Cora stared at the page as if it might change. It didn't. The silence in the room was heavier than any argument. The room divided between rage and resignation. The cartel had never known a choice this simple. And this final, the silence stretched. The offer lay on the table, the only path forward, but no one was ready to walk it. A cartel emergency broadcast flickered across the star networks. The voiceover accused the cooperative of hoarding protein to drive prices higher. The report claimed Terran silos were overflowing while starving colonies received nothing, a complete inversion of the truth. Within the hour, independent logistics auditors released live inventory data. Every gram was accounted for, every shipment documented. The galaxy's largest news service ran a single headline: Cartel caught in lie. The smear campaign had backfired completely. A Galactic Council spokesperson, unscheduled, faced reporters. Perhaps it is time for a new model of commerce, they said. In the cartel boardroom, the screens went dark. The last weapon had misfired.
We have no cards left.
No one objected. The board had bet its reputation on a lie and lost. In Des Moines, Margaret Holloway watched the same broadcast without comment. She had not lifted a finger. The cartel had exhausted every bluff. The only offer still on the table was hers. The board vote was unanimous. Every hand went up, trembling, but up. The cartel would sell. An aide relayed the decision to Rel Cora's private office. There was a catch.
She demands my signature personally, and she wants to meet.
Cora's tendrils stiffened, reflexive pride, then wilted. He nodded once. Arrange it. In Des Moines, Margaret gathered her senior team. The old star chart lay rolled in the corner.
No gloating, no cameras, no speeches. We treat this as a business transaction, fair and final.
A small cooperative shuttle lifted from the edge of the Iowa field. Margaret wore a simple dark jacket with the sheaf of wheat pin. A neutral orbital conference station rotated slowly in the void, its empty rooms waiting. Cora arrived first. He sat in silence, staring at the empty chair across the long obsidian table. The door slid open. Margaret Holloway stepped in, her gaze steady. The two sat facing each other across the table. Between them, a small bowl of fresh apples from Earth's soil, a gift Margaret had placed there herself.
The Krellin cartel has fed this galaxy for 3 centuries. Our supply chains built the outer colonies. You cannot simply erase that.
I am not erasing it, Mr. Cora. I am redirecting it. That history isn't gone. It's just changing hands.
And what of the thousands of Krellin workers who depend on the cartel? Their livelihoods, their families.
Will be offered competitive contracts under the cooperative. I am not here to humiliate you, Mr. Cora. I am here to close a deal.
She placed the final contract on the table between them. The paper was simple, but it carried the weight of 71%.
You are not signing away your history. You are choosing your people's next meal.
Cora's hand hovered over the document. Then, with a trembling claw, he signed. The strokes were unsteady but complete.
Thank you.
She did not smile. She tucked the contract into her jacket and walked out of the room without looking back. Within 72 hours, the cartel's insignia was gone. Cooperative crews repainted every orbital silo in Wheatfield green and Harvest gold. Automated messages reached every client. Your protein supplier is now the Terran Farm Cooperative. Operations continue without interruption. The Dorothy G. and her sister ships moved with clockwork precision. Protein stockpiles, once held for ransom, flowed again. Margaret Holloway recorded a brief statement from her desk. No fanfare, just her calm voice.
In 48 hours, the Terran Farm Cooperative will announce its new protein pricing. Until then, I ask the galaxy for patience.
The message flickered across every market square and freighter cabin. For the first time in decades, the protein market went silent. Speculation churned. Some traders predicted a new monopoly squeeze. Others remembered the cooperative's charity and stayed quiet. The cartel's headquarters flew a banner. Under new management. Passersby stopped to stare. The storm clouds had broken. In a small apartment 3 sectors away, Rel Cora sat alone. The former director watched the same broadcast on a flickering screen. He said nothing. His tendrils were still. The galaxy was holding its breath, and he was no longer part of the conversation. The 48 hours expired. Margaret Holloway stood before a sparse podium. No banners, no logos, just her.
Our new protein price is 40% below what the galaxy paid before the crisis.
A collective gasp rolled through the assembled reporters and the billions watching live.
Additionally, 12 worlds that suffered the worst under prior pricing will receive emergency rations at no cost.
A holographic map bloomed beside her, highlighting 12 famine-stricken systems. Each one bore a cooperative supply route. On Canthor V, a dust-choked settlement erupted in cheers as the transmission ended. The press room erupted. A single reporter shouted over the din. Why? What's the catch?
Because we can. And because it's right.
The cooperative's newly listed stock didn't surge. It settled, steady as a planted field. Rel Cora watched from his apartment. The price was lower than anything he had ever charged. He closed his eyes. In the Grand Council Hall, Margaret Holloway received the Humanitarian Award. A simple glass globe, accepted without ceremony. Her speech was barely a minute. She thanked the cooperative's members, then stepped aside, as if the award belonged to someone else. A journalist moved to intercept her as she walked toward the exit. The question came fast. Director Holloway, how did a farmers' cooperative dismantle a trillion credit cartel?
I didn't dismantle anything. I just followed instructions. Someone else planned this, decades ago.
The journalist's recorder light blinked. Instructions from whom?
From someone who saw this coming 80 years ago. Someone who knew the cartel would overreach. And I'll tell the full story when I'm ready, not before.
The clip of her answer spread across the star networks. In every sector, pundits and citizens asked the same question. Who had written the playbook for this 80 years ago? And why was Margaret Holloway the one following it? Dusk settled over the Iowa fields. Margaret Holloway walked the farmhouse path alone. The award forgotten. Inside, she pulled a shoebox from the top shelf. The lid read Dorothy in faded marker. A photograph rested on top. Young Dorothy, laughing in a wheat field. Beneath it, a bundle of letters tied with twine. She unfolded the top one, handling it like glass. My dearest Margaret, if you are reading this, the cartel has done exactly what I predicted. 80 years ago, they will overreach. Here is the playbook. Buy quiet, pay fair, never threaten. Let greed be their only weapon.
She had known the plan existed. To see it in Dorothy's own handwriting was different.
The paper trembled slightly. Margaret Holloway read on. The weight of 80 years settling onto her shoulders. The kitchen was silent, except for the rustle of old paper. She did not notice the first tear until it blurred the ink. She wrote of the barn in 2089 where she'd gathered the first farmers, promising that hunger would never again be a weapon. They will call it conquest. You will know it is care. Margaret's tears fell freely. Her face, streaked with sorrow and pride, found a smile. The letter ended. Remember, Margaret, the field is never just for one harvest. You were born for this. Now finish it. She folded the paper with the same care her grandmother had used writing it, holding it to her chest. She stood, walked to the window, and looked out at the night stretching over the fields. Above, a freighter's light blinked among the stars, a distant echo of the work still to be done. She returned to the table, placed the letter back in the shoebox, and closed the lid gently. Her hand rested there for a long, quiet moment. The kitchen was silent. The box held its secret, waiting for the next. Later that night, Margaret lifted the shoebox lid again and set a fresh sheet of paper before her. The nib scratched softly. This letter would not wait 80 years. It would begin tonight. To whoever opens this box next, you are not alone. Your grandmothers planned for this. She wrote of buy quiet, hold fair, feed freely. The same principles her grandmother had etched into the cooperative's foundation. When they come for our fields, remember this box. Trust the quiet ones. She signed, M. Holloway. Then she placed a pressed flower from Dorothy's garden inside the fold. She folded the letter with care and nestled it beside Dorothy's bundle. The shoebox now held 2 generations. She closed the lid and picked up the marker. On the lid, beneath her grandmother's name, she wrote, "For the next." She returned the shoebox to its shelf, turned off the kitchen light, and left the box waiting in darkness for the crisis that hadn't yet come. Years had smoothed the old barn into a museum. Sunlight poured through the high windows, catching the tools now mounted on the walls. Margaret Holloway, her hair fully silver, sat on a bench and told the story of Dorothy to a circle of children from a dozen worlds. In the farmhouse kitchen that evening, her great-grandniece tugged her sleeve and pointed at the shoebox on the shelf. The box rested inside a small glass display, now, her grandmother's words visible through the pane. The child's whisper came as a question she had clearly been holding breath for.
Only if you are needed, little one. And I hope you never are.
The girl nodded seriously, placing her small hand on the glass as if sealing a promise. Margaret looked past the box to the photograph of Dorothy on the wall, still laughing in a wheat field. The story from 2089 had become a covenant, renewed every generation by those who knew to wait. And the box would wait, just as it always had. The Dorothy G orbited a lush colony world, her cargo bay glowing orange as she delivered another season's harvest. A young insectoid farmer knelt in alien soil, testing its richness. He smiled, a Terran technique shared freely. In the home fields, Dorothy's bronze statue caught the last daylight. Wildflowers bloomed between her feet. Inside the barn museum, the shoebox waited behind glass. The plaque below it read, "Opened when needed," on a rebuilt street. A child opened a yellow ration pack. Inside, protein stamped with the sheaf of wheat. The old barn doors stood open, and above them, the TFC logo shone in the night sky like a promise kept. From high orbit, Earth wore a crown of green lights, freighters, silos, supply routes, all feeding the galaxy. The galaxy ate, and the hands that fed it were quiet, calloused, and unyielding.